So as we wrap up 2022 and head into 2023, there is a lot of talk and debate online around the Nintendo Switch and where it stands from a performance perspective as we look at the console today. There's an entire group of people that feel like online that Nintendo may try to hold on to the success of this system for far too long and not put out any kind of successor in a reasonable amount of time, or even just a more powerful revision to get it up to things like 4K resolution or better frame rates when docked. And then there's another group that looks at the sales momentum of this console and thinks, yeah, clearly Nintendo would be crazy to be talking about any kind of new revision or successor to the console, and they should just stay the course ultimately up to 8, 9, or 10 years of the Switch being sold and available. And in today's video, I want to highlight and discuss a couple mainstream news articles that have been going viral about the Switch and how it runs games today, and have that big conversation on whether or not 2023 is the year that us Nintendo Switch fans can't expect to hear anything official in the way of new hardware from Nintendo. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As mentioned, guys, we are once again today discussing the idea of what Nintendo's plans may be when it comes to new Nintendo Switch hardware, and the reason this is making the headlines once again, if it hasn't been in the headlines enough in 2022, there are some year-end review articles that are being typed up from major mainstream publications. One of which, the first one we're going to take a look here at, is The Verge. And you know, there's a lot of tech eyeballs on this that aren't even the biggest gamers, and you can see the headlines. The fails of 2022. The Nintendo Switch really showed its age. We've had 5 years of great games and sluggish performance. Nintendo's console is pulling in the opposite direction of its software, which is bigger and better than ever before. Now, they go down the article, first highlighting games like Breath of the Wild actually showcased everything that the Switch is capable of in their opinion, meaning that a launch title for the Switch really pushed the hardware as far as it could ultimately go. They also mentioned things now like with the Steam Deck being another portable console that you can play on the market at its price point of $399, that it highlights a lot of these performance gaps in the Nintendo Switch, and a lot of the games that are being released for it don't run as smooth as they should. They then round out the article stating that if there was ever a perfect time to launch a meaningful hardware update to the Switch, aside from any time in the last 2 years, it'd be on May 12th, 2023, the day that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom will release its follow-up to the 2017 launch title, Breath of the Wild, a brilliant Zelda game that revealed all of the Switch was capable of and not capable of out of the gate. So that is their opinion here on The Verge, with the state of hardware essentially just saying that Breath of the Wild was the cap for this thing, and we technically haven't seen a more impressive game since. You then have Kotaku, which I put a little bit less stock into their article reads a lot of the times, just depending on who's writing it. It can be all over the place and maybe worth noting or not, but this is the state of Nintendo Switch in 2022, and they get into the nitty-gritty on a lot more of the games, highlighting games like Pokemon that saved the Switch in terms of sales, but you know, from a perspective of technical hardware limitations, like we've seen some buggy releases on the Nintendo Switch. I was a huge fan of Bayonetta 3, but it also definitely highlighted some of the glaring frame rate issues and low resolution textures when there's a lot of stuff happening on screen and big boss fights. You can tell that you're not playing that game at a high resolution and with a stable frame rate. It is blatantly obvious. And they highlight right out of the gate in their article, as we approach the Switch's 6th anniversary, it feels like Nintendo's innovative hybrid gaming device has finally peaked and is now on the decline. Missing features and poor online experiences that were once easier to forgive have started to feel more frustrating. Even the latest visually impressive first-party games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 struggle to mask the hardware's aging limitations. And this is one point that I will just objectively, as a Switch fan and somebody who talks about the Switch all the time, yeah, we are getting to that point where it is obvious that the Tegra X1 that was originally developed in 2015 and then sold in the Switch in March of 2017 is having a hard time keeping up with the scope of newer Nintendo Switch games. The games are getting broader. They are trying to accomplish more. We saw Pokemon step into the first ever open world experience this year, and now that may just be all on Game Freak not optimizing the title, but you also can't deny that it would be a lot easier to get those games to run in an optimized state with more powerful hardware. And you can play the blame game all day long on different developers who don't take the time to get the games running up to it's acceptable standard before it ships, but I do think there's a conversation to be had on both sides of the issue, as yes, there's a lot of rush jobs and games that just have to come out at a certain date for the big wigs in the company, and they ship the games in an unfinished state. And that's definitely a big aspect of the problems when we've seen things like impossible ports be completely done on the Switch and have some fantastic games that run just fine on the platform. It's not that it's impossible, it's just that it does take truly a lot of extra work compared to if you just have something that is beefy enough to run major open world titles without all of those techniques that have to be done in the development perspective. And we're seeing a lot of games, even like Hogwarts Legacy, that is a big release on all platforms. We are seeing the Nintendo Switch version of that game pushed back to the latest launch date out of any version because, well, it may be just that. The developers may have realized, hold on, we have to really slow down and work extra hard on this game to make it playable because of the hardware. Or maybe there's speculation out there that that's going to be on new, more powerful hardware, which is a possibility, but it is also a stretch just to jump to that conclusion because of a release date for a Switch version of a game getting pushed back. We have seen plenty of delays for Switch versions of games, and just the fact that the Switch is getting a game that massive with that kind of scope being Hogwarts Legacy, it's impressive to begin with, but that's where I think we have to pivot the conversation a little bit and realize that we shouldn't be in a scenario in 2022 with all of this success around Nintendo Switch and its branding that we have to be blown away as fans that these projects are actually possible to come to the console. I would much rather live in a world where there's a $400, $450, or even $500 tier Nintendo Switch that's being sold, whether it be the Switch 2 or just a more powerful revision. It would be nice to have a lot of the third-party ports that come over sometimes as cloud-only games on the Switch because the developers don't want to put that time and effort to get the games to run correctly. We had Kingdom Hearts, the entire series, launch on the Switch, which is like, that's the perfect platform for them. And how did they come over? Every single last one as a cloud port, which really killed all of the hype and excitement around that series being playable in portable play on the Switch because you can't enjoy the game the same whenever it's a cloud port. And I think objectively speaking, you can look at all of those games and realize that Square Enix could have spent the time and resources to get them running natively on the Switch, but they chose not to because of the type of task and financial burden that would go along with making native ports, and they opted to choose the easy way out, which is the cloud port. Now, in terms of if 2023 is indeed the year we see something more powerful or what's next from Nintendo, the thing to keep in mind anytime we're talking about Nintendo and their plans is that we are talking about Nintendo. We see the most out of left field, nobody predicted it type of scenarios come from this company, which is what makes them a lot of fun to talk about and speculate around on the channel. That also means you have to go into things with the mindset of it could look like they are setting the stage for a more powerful console hardware launch, and Tears of the Kingdom in May 12th of 2023 does seem logically, from a business perspective, the right time to launch what is next and propel it off in its sales trajectory the same way that we saw the Switch launch with Breath of the Wild. Hit the copy paste button on that for what's next. It makes a ton of sense. I personally would love to see that happen, and I want to see that happen. However, because of the Switch at this point in its life cycle, wrapping up the 6th year of sales in March and starting the 7th year of sales, it still has forward momentum behind it. Surprisingly, it is not just dropping off of a cliff. There are still new Switch owners each and every day that are out there getting OLED models, base models, and even Switch Lites. They are not in a position where they are going to be forced to play their hand if it is not the right time for them when it comes to things like sourcing the correct components and the chip materials. Yes, we are far enough into the Switch's life cycle that I think it is natural to have the conversation around what is coming next, but whether or not that's 2023, 2024, or even 2025 is all a coin toss. My personal hope is that they stick to something more like a 3DS or DS line of consoles where we get the new versions that just run better, but is still in the same Switch family and cross-compatible with all of the library of games. That is really how I would like to see Nintendo navigate the branding of the Switch, or just give us a true Nintendo Switch 2 and make it have console exclusive games, but you still have some that are cross-developed, the same way we see PlayStation 4 games still sold today. Like, yeah, they've been into the PlayStation 5 generation for 2 years now, and God of War Ragnarok, Sony's giant blockbuster title, came out for the PS5 and the PS4. I am okay with seeing scenarios like that where on the base model Switch, the game's still going to come out, but it's not going to run anywhere as nice as it will on the new, more powerful Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, but you still have the option to buy either version. That's personally where I fall in all of this, but I want to hear from you guys around this topic because, yeah, it's getting traction again online with a lot of these year-end review articles talking about the flaws of the Nintendo Switch and the shortcomings when it comes to the performance end of things. And I really want to know how you feel about it personally with major game releases like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Is that all the developers' fault, or is there definitely responsibility on both ends? How did you feel about games like Bayonetta 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and other major first-party 2022 releases? Do you think that it is definitely at that time where we are seeing truly the Switch's age and it's time for Nintendo to pull back the curtain on what is next? Or do you think it's actually smarter for them to just double down on their existing lineup of consoles and keep that as the only purchase option for the rest of 2023 and into 2024? And when do you think it is truly the right time to kick off the next generation or revision of the Switch, and which one do you ultimately think it'll be? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around this topic. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.